audience really able to meet. You have the audience and participants all together.
Intellectual practices, historical practices, cultural practices.
Examples of women
Sharing what it is that you do, sharing how you do that.
There's no way you can ignore Latinos anymore.
What time is it now? Kenya? It started out about different people and about different things. A whole sea of Paloma, theater for everybody, yes, everybody.
That's really done. And we do have understanding of life, relationships, death.
I've already checked.
So welcome everybody to the Martin Zito Center, and a shout out to Brad who put this great clip together with us. And I hope it shows a little bit what we are doing. My name is Frank Henschke. I'm the executive director and co-director of program together with Antje Oegel. So welcome on that beautiful New York day to take a time out of your, for sure, very busy life. But I think this evening tonight is something very special and inspiring and intriguing. Dance New York performed Manifestos. And it's a true honor that we host the artists who are sitting here, and that we will see what is going on in their minds, what they think about, and what we all should be thinking about. It should not be longer than 90 minutes. We have 10 or 11 presentations, about 5 minutes, but Antje and Tom and Andrea will talk more about this. There is a small reception around the corner in a bar called the ArKtype bar. It's on 36 between 5th and 6th Avenue. You want to join us? Even if you have a cell phone, just take it out for a moment and I'll do the same. Then it should say sound off, silent, whatever. In the old days, one had to say beeper, but luckily that doesn't exist anymore. So thank you so much for doing it, and I'll hand over right now to the curators of the evening, Andre, Antje, and Tommy. So maybe you come here and talk a little bit about it. Thank you.
Sure. Hi. How are you? I'm Tommy Kriegsmann. I'm director of programs at New York Live Arts. This is André Zachery, extraordinary creator, performer, and all-around exceptional human being, and Antje Oegel, of course, also an all-around extraordinary human being and an agent and producer and all these amazing things and curator of this. If I may start off, what was driving this when we got together was to try to capture a moment and an essence of a certain time. And I think what we all think about in this certain time is how the hell can you possibly make art in this environment, the way that we support these unbelievable people, these unbelievably imaginative people. You know, I just got back from Europe, and every time you're in Europe, you're reminded how insane it is that art even gets made in America on the level of support that happens here when we've got choreographers working for 6-8 months developing new languages with the same set of dancers in one place. And we come here and we're very, very lucky if we get, you know, a certain amount of weeks, the dancers working for nothing, the choreographer working for nothing, everybody sacrificing to make things happen. And in that classic American fashion, maybe it's better somehow, you know, the more strained our resources are, the better we are. But it's you know, a means of saying, okay, well, what at the heart of what we do makes it so that no one in this room would ever be doing anything else but what they're doing. And maybe tonight we'll get a little glimpse of why individually each one of them has that.
Thanks, Tommy. I'm Andre, as Tommy said. Andre Zachery. I'm the director of Renegade Performance Group, and also a member of the collective Wildcat, and really grateful to Antje for bringing us together. Really thankful for all of the artists, the practicing artists that are here and will contribute. Thanks for literally taking the time out of your schedules and your work. For some who I have not met, it's really great to meet you all in the flesh. Cannot wait to really hear your stance and hear your other voice, if you will. And that's one of the driving motivations behind this gathering, is to really let out your other voice, our literal voices that not necessarily are as, I would say, archived even, in our own practices. And so this, I guess, is an opportunity to also kind of like look back at the idea of what reading manifestos were, or just imprinting manifestos, or laying out our ideas of our stances, especially in this time, as Tommy kind of reiterated. I think it's really necessary that in this time, our voices are literally being presented, as well as our body politic as well as artists and movement artists and choreographers. So just thank you all once again for coming. It's really kind of great to see this amazing collection of all of us.
Yes, well, thank you. I mean, that was just beautifully put. I would love to quickly talk about the structure of the evening. So we will start. That's right. Well, we will start with the manifestos. There are actually 12 of them. We decided to not determine an order in advance. So it's pretty much up to you. So who wants to go first jumps in. And we will project the name up here on the screen. And afterwards, we will have a discussion with all of you, if you can stay really to discuss these questions and these things that Tommy and Andre were talking about. Yeah, so that's it. So let's the evening begin.
Or not.
I'm gonna go. I have a quiet voice. So I'm gonna do this. Is this on? It's too low. That's me. I'm Andrea Kleine. I'm a choreographer of sorts, and not a very good microphone technician. I'm sorry. Is that on?
That's on. I'm a choreographer. Sometimes I call myself a performance artist, and I'm also a writer. I'm going to read a text that I wrote for my blog called The Dancers Will Win. It was the first piece that I wrote for that blog, and I called it a manifesto. I don't know if it is a manifesto. I wrote it 3 years ago. I don't know if I still believe it. It's not particularly about my work. My work is, it's interdisciplinary. A lot of it currently is about my personal conflict with performing, with being a performer, but I'm sort of I'm interested in things that make me uncomfortable. I'm interested in the construct of self. I'm interested in interrogating violence. And I like how the three disciplines I work in sort of all go together and then sometimes don't talk to each other at all. Anyways, so this is a text I wrote called The Dancers Will Win. And it was about a Merce Cunningham film at MoMA of his piece Ocean that was shot by Charles Atlas. Boo! Boring! Trivial! Meaningless! The credits were rolling and the lights were slowly fading up in the imperiously named Titus Theater. The person booing was sitting in the row behind us. Meaningless! Boo! He shouted again, then apologized to the woman sitting next to him. Sorry if I'm embarrassing you, but I'm gonna mix it up. B and I looked at each other. Holy shit, we thought. Why, we are smack dab in the middle of a mid-century modern dance smackdown. Modern dance smackdowns don't come along all that often. Modern dancers are often obedient, masochistic sort, used to obliging choreographers who ask them to walk naked across a stage full of cut glass, or the equivalent, walking in circles backwards on half releve for the good part of an hour, that sort of thing. They do it, we watch them do it, and everyone is usually quiet about it. I romanticize that modern dance smackdowns used to happen more often in that era of coveted furniture, the mid-20th century, i.e. the beginning of the era of Merce. Which brings us back to MoMA. Who was this booing person about to mix it up at a spottily attended post-screening Q&A? Was he a Martha Graham devotee? A Bellotto Maine? Was it Alistair Macaulay? Was he cut out of Merce's will? Unfortunately, Bea and I had to sit through the usual blah blah Q&A. Can we talk about how it was shot? Can you talk about the score? Can I order Merce Cunningham DVDs on Amazon? Before this guy got his moment on the mic, Bea whipped out his phone and recorded it. Mr. Mix It Up. Yeah, hi. I definitely did not get this movie or the dance, and I believe that art, especially the art in MoMA, is a dialogue. Everything I've ever heard about art is that they're trying to evoke a dialogue or a reaction. My reaction was that this thing was really not good. And I'd like anybody in this audience to explain to me, and I've seen Newman, I've seen some of the abstract expressionism. I really do enjoy art. I'm trying to get a sense of what the meaning of this is, because I really felt that if there was a drip of paint drying on the screen, it would have been as meaningful to me as this piece. So I'm really, listen, you could hate me, you could dismiss me. I really did not get this. I sat through it. There was hope eternal here for me to try and understand this. I give you credit for filming it. It was nicely done. I'm reacting in my own visceral way to a piece that I did not get. Now, you people here seem to understand it, appreciate it. You know, abstract expressionism, meaning it's a connection. I mean, I'm going to keep going here. The audience was now aflutter. A woman in the front row turned around and glared at him with an expression that Bea described as, quote, looking as if she had just smelled the foulest thing on earth. And another woman shouted him down, okay, we heard you. You didn't like it, okay. Charles Atlas graciously responded to what the audience had collectively decided was a lunatic. Charles Atlas, I'm not going to try and explain Merce's work, but I will just say that his work was always challenging. Some people liked it, some people didn't like it. It was actually very late in his career that he actually was appreciated. There's a level of abstraction there that perhaps takes some getting used to, but there are several Merce Cunningham experts in the audience who may be able to talk to you afterwards. Mr. Mix It Up, well, I would like that. Charles Atlas, well, there's one sitting right behind you. Point Charles Atlas a notice of the audience. Someday, I want to be that old woman in the front row smelling something foul. I want to be 80 years old with dyed jet black hair and dyed eyebrows and harsh lipstick and wearing a fez. And I want to dagger-eyed defend something. I want to be that old and believe in something so much that I will take my arthritic bones over there and smack down someone who said something against someone like Merce and not care how much it will cost me in physical therapy bills later. I really do enjoy art. Fuck you. To give Mr. Mix It Up a minute fraction of a point, there is something beautiful about the not getting it-ness of dance. I go to dance to look at something that might not make sense, to possibly experience something outside of a linear narrative, to be a part of something that isn't broken down into digestible newsy bites. I go to dance to not get it. Or as Miguel Gutierrez said about his own work in one of my favorite project descriptions ever, quote, I thought about how people don't get dance and how great it is that there's something in the world that people don't get. And was it meaningless? Yes, sort of. It was in the way Mr. Mix It Up thinks meaning is. That was Merce's whole point with chance procedures and choreographing by throwing the I Ching, wasn't it? Not everything in this world has meaning. Even if you took the title of the work literally, ocean, does an ocean mean anything? And if so, what? An ocean just is, until it evaporates from global warming, and then it isn't. But Mr. Mix-It-Up didn't want to talk about it. He got up with his MoMA gift store purchases and sauntered out ahead of the rest of us. Merce Cunningham didn't fold up nicely and fit into his shopping bag. You can't buy Charles Atlas's Merce Cunningham DVDs on Amazon. There do need to be some things in life and art that remain elusive and unobtainable and uncollectible and ununderstandable. There do need to be some things that rattle around in our brains for longer than it takes to click like. And in this case, the dancers will win. Because there is no Photoshop, GarageBand, iMovie, or memoir writing workshop version of dance. It can't be downloaded. It requires too much specialized and consistent training. It costs too much and pays too little. It takes up too much time and doesn't last long enough. It demands everything and leaves you with nothing. The dancers will outlast us all. The rest of us are dilettantes. The dancers will win. Thank you.
It's okay.
My butt? No. Okay. Oh, not supposed to see that. Magic. Okay. My name's Katy Pyle. I'm the artistic director of a dance company that's called Ballet's. It's pronounced just like that, so then you know what it means. And what we're trying to do is radically reimagine the ballet canon. I'm going to say we, because I am sort of the person that is the artistic director of this group, but it's really a collective group, and it cannot exist within my body or in the reality of just my body. That's not what it is, and I want you to know that. Okay, so Ballet's is performance, company, class, and community. We've performed in Brooklyn and Manhattan since 2011 with really no significant institutional support other than a 2-year artist in residence at Brooklyn Arts Exchange, which was really helpful. We did our first major show, The Firebird, in 2013, which was a story of self-made transformation with the Firebird character reimagined as a transgender person within a community creating their own new story and new body and new life. We just had our last show 2 weeks ago, Sleeping Beauty and the Beast, at La Mama with 43 performers, including an orchestra, and it was awesome. We have had class at Brooklyn Arts Exchange since 2011. It's an open class. You can come, you can tell your friends about it. You just have to be willing to mirror and reflect the beauty of the human beings that are around you and prioritize queer embodiment, and consider that for yourself. The work is co-created by the community, the performers, the class takers, the witnesses, and the people that just see us on the internet. It does exist on the internet. I'm interested in that. We invite everyone, you too. We're inviting you to witness the lineage, performances, and stories of lesbian, transgender, and queer people. And we are inviting you to witness us within the context of one of the most elite, revered art forms of the Western world, certainly the most elite dance form that I can imagine. We're inviting you to witness us here because we know that we're going to fail to meet the expectations that you have of that form. And we're giving you this platform because you can maybe access it. Maybe you can connect to a narrative. Maybe you can connect to some music. Maybe you can connect to the theatricality of this form. And I want you to be able to understand something so that I can get closer to you. Why make ballets? I'm going to read these things from here. I hate narrow-minded, bigoted ideas of rightness, and I live in a world consumed with rightness. I hate the way my body is perceived, objectified, and considered property, and I was trained to perform a gender, to be objectified, and to consider my value in alignment with feminine cultural ideals. I hate the ballet world's rejection of multiplicity, and I hate that any small stray from the classical model is considered radical. I like also playing with those structures, those assumptions, and presenting my work in the context of those rigid structures in order to dismantle them. I want to destroy ballet, or force it to make room for something else. Ballets rewrites the narratives of story ballets to tell the story of our lineage as dancers and as queers. We change all the stories and put our stories in the center of these narratives of story ballets. This is not contemporary ballet. This is not postmodern, abstracted ballet about form. This is emotionally driven, fantastical storytelling that is offered to people of all backgrounds and dance knowledge. This is not an attempt to be obtuse. It is an attempt to be seen, felt, and understood. Ballet reimagines archetypal characters to reflect multiplicity of identity, desire, and expression. You can see here Aurora from My Sleeping Beauty supporting the Violet Fairy, who is her fairy godmother. I could tell you more about those characters, but you should come to the show. Help us do it again if you didn't see it. Ballet's dancers claim our inherent nobility and belonging within, around, and on top of a form that has historically excluded us. Nobility to me is a physical and energetic expression. It is a radical act for us to claim belonging in the form of ballet, which has rejected us at every turn. Every member of the ballets has been rejected in their full truths, in their actual full embodiment from the ballet world. And our defiance in claiming that space is something that we're doing for ourselves and for each other, not accepting that we don't get to be a part of the story. We're changing the story. We will keep changing the story. Ballet celebrates the virtuosity of complexly gendered embodiment, energetic eloquence, queer coding, and magical adaptability of expression. We are positing that virtuosity is not about high jumps or fouette turns or all the technical feats that have dominated ballet culture in the last century. And in fact, prior to 1915, ballet technique was not consumed with such gross physical attributes or acrobatics. We are positing instead that our ability to communicate the lived experience of our bodies, our very unique lives and experiences, through this stodgy old form is in and of itself an act of virtuosity, and it's way better. Ballet is created by a community of diverse performers, each of whom has a unique gift to offer this collaborative form. Ballet rejects the narrow set of ideals posited by ballet. We are not the same. We don't want to be. If I never see another traditional ballet in my life, I will die happy. I don't want to propagate the same thing. I want to change it, and I want to work with you to bust it wide open. Let's rip it apart and bring in some new love. And then this is, about you. You are a mirror. Ballet is a mirror. We are mirroring you. You will see what you reflect. When you fail to meet us on our own terms, our performance will fail to you. This is a built-in punishment. But there is also an invitation to fall in love with us with what is here in front of you with you. We will offer you so many ways in, but we will never assimilate to the expectation you carry in the back of your mind. We will keep beaming the light of our souls at you until that image fades, getting less and less, until it disappears in a brilliant supernova of brand new ideas. Come and be mirrored.
Hey guys, so I guess I'll give you a little context from where I'm coming from with this one. I started a series in 2014 called the Afrofuturism series, and it was kind of a culmination of a lot of work I've been doing in school and in my own interest. It was kind of at a time where a lot of things were intersecting from my own practice as a choreographer, and then as also a visual artist, and looking at film and media, and the idea of framing and the layers within framing. And then in the last year, I guess it's also taken on new meaning with especially a lot of the collaborators that I've been working with. So I guess right now, I'm kind of in a place of struggle, just in the time we're in now, because the idea of Afrofuturism in itself is often about radical stance and literally like radical presence, radical action, radical thought, and it's at a place where I'm like, well, how far does that actually go within our own work, or beyond even, the walls of the setting within performance in itself? So this is just something, I don't know if it'll work, and we'll see what happens. So, we'll experiment with it. I revised a manifesto that I devised back in school, so. It is next week's fire put out by Baldwin's tongue. It is the unpaid debt to Black mothers. It is the silent laugh of Elegba's voice. It is my step forward in yesterday's blues. And I ask now, what is our place to heal, to be held, or be still? What is myself without my father's sins? What is my role if not to be a necessary burden? What is my future without America's intention of castration? What will be my dance of forgiveness?
I reminisce for a spell, shall I say, think back 22 years ago to keep it on track. The birth of a child when they gave a back to one my toes. When my granddaddy came so well, get all the fingers to the toes. Now I suppose you hope the little black boy grows. 18 years younger than my mama, but I really got beans with the girl of drama. And single parent with their roster. By the time she was 21, had another one. This one's a girl, let's name her Pam. Same father as the first, but you don't give a damn. Irresponsible, plain not thinking. Papa said chill, but the brother keep thinking. Still he rolled down, you would tear out your hide. Work your side while the baby make a slide. The mama got wise to the game. The youngest of 5 kids, hun, here it is. After 10 years without no spouse, mom's getting married in the house. Listen, positive over negative, for the woman a master. All the queens rise in the chapter. Deja vu, tell you what I'm gonna do when they reminisce over you, my God. My right hand, Papa Doc, I see. Took me from a boy to a man, so I always had a father with my biological big mother. Taking care of this, so who am I to make up? Not a bad ticker, but I'm fucking pop's liver. But you can never say that it's like the 3, 5 kids and 21, believe you got a right to. You ain't know how I check the scene with the Portuguese lover at the age of 14. The same age, front page, no fuss, but I bet you all you know they live longer than us. Never been seen now, that's where you're on. But give a man a taste and he's gone. Not no sleep to a jazz tune. I can hear his head banging on the wall in the next room. I get the pillow and hope I don't wake him. I'm just scared to cuss, hear it all in verbatim. Telling me how to raise my boy unless he's taking over. I said, Pop, maybe when you're older. We laughed all night about the hookers at the party. My old man standing yelling, good God Almighty. Use your condom, take sips of the booze. When they reminisce over you, for real. Like that. For real. Coming extra. In 92. Rock still smooth. I reminisce so you never forget this. The days of way back, so many here witness the fitness. Take the first letter, add each word in this joint. Listen close as I prove my point. Detail on the whole why, how did you and I meet? For the big who's fighting in the street. But only you saw what took many time to see. I dedicated to you for believing in me. Rain or shine, yes in any weather. And where my hand holds the family together. My Uncle Doc's the greatest, better get the latest. If we're talking about a car, Uncle Sterling got the latest. It's proud to be live, cause I got no choice. And run my own business like my aunt Joyce. So keep rocking me, no respect you. We can reminisce over you. Listen.
I can barely put into words what to say about this manifesto, particularly on performance being in need of As a choreographer and performer, I believe yes. As a choreographer performer, I have the privilege to confront the events that have shaped me through their repetitious reenactment in performance and in what is erroneously referred to as rehearsal. How I have become myself, how I have become others. Repeat last statement using the word through. Interchange placement of words myself and others. How I have become myself through others, how I have become others through myself. Repeat. Repetition shows you time has passed. Look, we are 3 minutes older. The audience is the real space. I used to think dance skipped over the audience. After a month of contemporary dance festival in Europe, I realized audience implication skips over the audience. Can you let little happen so can resonate? Also known as taking it easy on stage. Continuous anticlimax. I am in support of a naiving. An anti-development. A babyation. Also in Spanish referred to as bebeción. A star-crab method.
together in darkness. Let's not make it so we can't be seeing each other. Let's not do it that way, Oegel. I want to take you somewhere you've never been. I think you'll like it. Let's start right here in this room. Can you see this room? It's not covered up. Let us not come together in darkness. Let me stand before you as if this is an important moment. Because this is an important moment. The moment between you and me, and you and me, between all of you and me. Let it be okay to look at each other freely. Let's not come together in darkness. Let's pretend this is real, because it is. Let us not have to pretend. I am 600 highwaymen. And some of you might remember your neighbor, your distant cousin, your mother, brother, friend. Keep looking at me. It's okay to keep staring. You see everything about me. My hands, do you see my feet, my legs? Do you see my face? Do you see my legs, my hair, my clothes? What is it you think of me? Who am I? Who am I? Who are you? You and me. And in a room that looks like this, I want to take you somewhere you have never been. And you see me do something like this. Or something like this. And you see me better now. Listen to me, I have beautiful dreams I can spin. Dreams too beautiful. You hear me just fine? Close your eyes and ride like carousel. I sing the stories of lovers whose lives to fill me, and the lovers who will be. For you see, love is one thing I do well. I am performing here for you. I am 600 highwaymen. You are my audience. Don't betray me, please. Be good to me. A good lover. See me for what I am and for what I could be and for who we could be together. Maybe I can help you to be better. Maybe not, but maybe I can. That is not too much to ask. Oh, my friends, you can't be as sweet as you seem. I never This is how I had hoped it would go. It's extraordinary how that works. It is extraordinary to have these feelings. Do I have to feel to get you to feel? feel too much. Maybe you don't feel anything. I want to leave room for you to feel. I won't tell you how to do it. You can do it however you want. In fact, I prefer it that way. I want to take you there. I want to take you somewhere you've never been. Let's not do it in the dark. Let's pretend that this is real.
Thank you. May you commit fully, be all in. Do this with your whole being. May you know that you are free, that you can quit at any time. May you be liberated from the sticky tendrils of attachment to what other people think of you. May you go towards what you love and say, fuck it. May you be free of dependence on applause, adulation, success, and congratulations. May you be wise enough to know that like any good addiction, you'll just want more. May you say yes. Open yourself to adventure, challenge, the things that scare you. May you be transformed. May you say no. May you be discerning and not clutter your time with bullshit. Overcommitment is not a virtue. Do not be seduced by the American New York cult of overdoing. May you say no. May you have a stable partner, friends, family, community, or all of the above. May they nurture, love, and value you despite the success and failures of your career. May you have endurance, especially for rejection. May you put yourself up for rejection again and again. May you be generous with other artists. May you share opportunity. May you be surrounded by artists you admire, and may you be brave enough to ask them out for coffee and ask them how they do it. And if you are jealous because you want what someone has, may you fall to your knees before them and say, yes, please. May you ask for help. May you let people help you. May you make the work that only you can make. May you be inspired and aware of the trends of your time, but may you not be bogged down by them. May you know that making art is enough. May you know that making art is always political. May you run towards the ever-elusive horizon line of your worst fucking fears and go towards and towards them until you pleasurably tear them a new asshole. May you fuck your doubt. May you take your doubt dancing and bump and grind and sweat with them and take them home and have beautiful, if not confused, sex with them. Fuck your doubt. May you lose all your screens and wander the streets without a map, not knowing what time it is, and may you bump into some people and then go to that opening. May you get lost. May you take breaks and vacations and be good for nothing and have a hobby. May you have fun. May you lovingly fire anyone who is sucking energy from your project. It's not worth it. It's too hard already. May you celebrate, may you delight in the dancers, collaborators, curators, funders, administrators who help make your work. May you celebrate and enjoy and not just anxiously move on to the next gig, next idea, next project. May you take your project descriptions, especially the ones that got funded, and may you flush them down the toilet and then go into the studio.
May you take your reviews and soak them in chili oil and cook them and eat them and then shit them out and flush them down the toilet. And then go into the studio. May you take your website and your Facebook page and your marketing materials and shred them and throw them into a fire and go into the studio, or the living room, or the park, or the rooftop, or whatever that empty space of making is. May you always go there. Hello, my name is Kate Watson-Wallace. I'm a choreographer and visual artist. I'm taking off my heels because they're so uncomfortable. Another thing that I do is professional development for artists. So I spend a great deal of my time traveling around the country with an organization called Artists U. That was started by Andrew Simonet after we had both gone through Creative Capital weekends and had our minds blown, and really realized that it's like so fucking hard out there for artists to do what we do. So we kind of put our thinking caps together and created a program that really interrogates the systems out there that support us or don't support us. And I feel like what I've learned from that, and not to state the obvious, but that it's a lot about self-care. So I'm currently in a graduate program at SAIC, Greg Bordowitz's program, and writing, which is amazing, and writing my thesis. And when I went to kind of try to figure out what to write my thesis on, and wanting it to connect to art, but also to the social practice work I do, I realized that I had to write about radical care because it was the only kind of consistent strategy that I saw throughout all these amazing, brilliant artists in New York and nationally that was really, really deeply working. So I decided to write about Larissa and Luciana. Because I think actually in such beautiful queer utopian ways, they're both engaging in strategies of care in their life, but also in their choreography. So unfortunately, because we only have 5 minutes, I can't read to you what I wrote about them, but this is sort of an intro that I came up with, and it's a working document, and it's a manifesto on care. That sort of frames this, frames me kind of thinking about their brilliant work through the lens of radical care. A manifesto on care. I believe in a culture of radical care, care for the self and for others, where this is a priority, not a second thought. I believe that if as artists we begin with gentleness and deep caretaking of the self and our collaborators, that systematic change is in fact possible. I believe there is a power in a collective culture of support, a culture based in love. I believe in radical practice of love in all things. Love is action, love is resistance, love is a counter to domination. I believe in a culture where the invisible work of women, queers, and people of color are just as valued as the high-paid work, and where barter economies, natural economies, household economies are given value, not just who makes money and sells product. I believe that this all takes time and rest and is in direct conflict with a culture of workaholism. I practice radical caring as a choreographic structure, a practice in the studio, an economic structure, and as an act of resistance to the current pace of culture and the structures of domination, those of capitalism, racism, sexism, classism, and homophobia. The artistic spaces I initiate are ones for transformation, space of being inside desire and all its complications. It is a queer space. It is unfixed and changing. Its essence is change. The container is a feminist space. It is responsive. There is hope in this container. There is room for imagining some wild, peaceful, pleasurable place that might feel like some kind of utopia, some future space, some place where our erotic selves are unlabeled, unmicroaggressed, unpornographied. In this container, we start in the body. Knowing is found through the body, through sensation, through each other, through staying inside a feeling. We live in the complex mud of sensation and perceive the world through a soft gaze of embodied perception. In this container, we are a feedback loop of transmitting care and love. In this space, there's a shape-shifting there's not a shape-shifting that tries to work inside a phallocentric world order. There's us, there is a reclaiming. Thank you.
I was really thinking about this idea of manifesto, and there are many realms in which I operate with sets of principles and practices. My name is Paloma McGregor, but that's really bad right now. And so I'm just going to share practice as it embodies itself in the multiple spheres of work that I do. And I can't help but have a whole body experience, and I'm going to move around and yeah. So 1, resist. Resist the desire to be there. Resist the notion that this is not the center. Resist the shakiness that comes up when you're in an audience of mostly white people. Resist the historical inequities that surface constantly. Resist the need to stand up when you really want to sit. Resist the need to say anything. Resist the feeling of isolation. And then remember. Remember that you have people. Remember that you come from somewhere. And though that's constantly changing, that you also come from here. Remember to breathe. Remember that despite what you've been told, there is nothing new. You are not new. The matter you're made of is not new. What you created is not new.
I like that.
But this lifetime is new. You could do something with this. Remember to do something with this. And then release. Release the expectations that come with being an artist in New York. That come with that last big grant you got. Release your doubt, and then get it again, and then release it again. And then, normally I would say repeat, but I have a 15-month-old now, so now I say rest. And then rest. Like this light here feels like the sun on my home island of St. Croix, and so I'm gonna rest here a minute and just feel like, oh yeah, I brought that place with me. I can find a little rest. Where do you find rest? Give yourself a second and rest. I think I have like probably 30 more seconds, so you guys can rest for 30 seconds. Oh, that's more restful. Yay, thank you, it's spelled correctly. So I'm Andrea Whitson, and I'm grateful to the people in the room. Thank you, family and sisterhood. And so I have a few conversations with you. I make work for the audiences that are here and that are beyond this place, the voices that keep me up at night, the crimes and oppressions that keep me from sleep, and the spells and magic making that the not yet born in order to become required. The stitches on the skin, weaving pathways to the future made by spirit, trauma, prayer. I pick up foot and pen and finger and wood to insert my body where it is made invisible, or victim, or second, or woman, or man, or straight. I queer always. I paint blackness on translucence. I make art. This thing we do is old. It is intelligent and constructed upon crumblings and triumphs. I sit shouldered beside diviners, root workers, circle spirit movers, healers, conjurers, people stitched finally in the occupations between here and there, always summoning an arrival, space like skin, always becoming. Every time space created, recreated. Nothing as it is as it is. When water dries the mouth, we hold on to sweat. When sweat lies, we let blood out, cry. Libation roots the feet, sometimes drowns the mouth for the work to breathe. We listen to the open and closed words. Joys, cry, 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 cries, cry. Dreams of all them brown, black, broken, war, weary, cut up, buried, queer, colored, spirit two, trans, cross, livers, non-con, non-form, indigenous. First people, I make ritual. Ritual makes me a beast. I dance. Art, think, fuck, cry, heal, joy, make, medicine, pray with unrelenting salt. My ancestors pour on oceans to what they ask of me. This making is an extension of my engaged commitment to liberation, where spirituality and art are understood as tools in warrior practice because the stakes are high. At the level of the cosmos, I am rigorous in all that I do. I often insert my body in history in order to elucidate and expose its absence. I celebrate the bodies, the narratives often made invisible in live performance in social spaces, challenge borders of constraint on masculinity, blackness, queerness that serve to choke expression, and to question what happens for performers and witnesses when the historical narratives attached to them are disrupted. I make art. Make me a crescent moon. I'd like to see the possibility my light made. Edward Whitson says, memory in our works is not a calendar memory. Our experience of time does not keep company with the rhythms of month and year alone. Like the dead, seeming cold rocks, I have memories within that came out of the material that went to make me, Zerino says. I shapeshift. Uncover physical process to speak aloud the excavation of existence beyond the body, where the body out loud, a dancing body out loud, has the unique facility to create and shift space and self. Fred Moulton in his lecture says, at stake is the presence of the flesh. Blackness comes into relief against the backdrop of its negation, which takes the form of epidermalization, of a reduction of some bodies to flesh into the status of nobody so that some others can take their claim upon bodies and soul. It is also what is at stake in my making and in my living, my own flesh. Dance and choreography are containers that lack the room to hold my body. Thus, I often reject obedience to their languages and rules and expectations in order to move away from a reduction. I make live performance that moves, stands still, stops time, creates space and body beyond the corporeal and temporal, and our work deserves all that we have the audacity to dream, to holler out for, and to claim. Keep doing it, please. Paloma, what do you have for me? Andrea, will you dance for me?
Hi, I'm James McGinn. Actually here on behalf of Jonah Bokaer, who's currently out of the country, asked me to say a few words and read a short excerpt from a work that was published in a Yale art journal. So hopefully that resonates. Sorry. I was gonna try. Just text me something to say. Of course, it's like epic. Between 2014 and 2015, choreographer and artist Jonah Bokaer worked with the Yale School of Art, Shared Studios, and Robert Storr, curator of the 2005 Venice Biennale, to produce the following manifesto published by the Yale Journal of Law and the Humanities. The title is On Vanishing, New Mythologies for Choreography. Today, Jonah has just received a foundation in Italy's prestigious award, and the first choreographer to become awarded. He has selected ongoing collaborator James McGinn to read this text, and he says, thanks to Tommy for the invitation tonight. Love you truly, Jonah. On Vanishing, Museums, Choreography, and Mythology by Jonah Bokaer. 1. Euripides to the audience, approximately 428 BC. Truth is often in some degree economic. Who likes to look straight at real passion? As if truths were skins of one another, and the ability to move, hunt, negotiate among them was a way of finessing the terms of the world in which we find ourselves. Skin game, so to speak. 2. On dance writing. In 2002, when I was 22 years old, beginning studies in animation and earning a degree in visual and media studies, I discovered that the ancient Greeks referred to choreography as dance writing, from the Greek words, I don't speak Greek, if you do, fill in the blank. This fascinated me because I had always viewed choreography as a visual act that vanishes. Its remnants are commonly witnessed in the bodies of performers reproducing movements and activities. The act of choreography is private, as opposed to dance, which is communally shared or publicly viewed. Choreography occurs, it is transmitted, and it disappears to become dance. Paradoxically, I believe this ephemerality heightens substantially if dance occurs in a museum. The Greek etymology of choreography led to substantial discovery for me, as it suggested an ancient relationship between dancing, writing, drawing, and the graphic arts. It made the word choreography seem more permanent and propelled a 5-year cycle of my digital animations, which are synthetic in nature, often combining movement, technological art, graphics, and drawing, frequently exhibited in museum contexts. More than 10 years later, in 2013, I located a sketchbook from that time in which I wrote a series of related goals. Goals, underlined. My project is to develop 5 proposals on the continuum of choreography. 1. To inhibit the act of vanishing in choreography, to capture choreography so that it does not have to vanish. 2. To intensify the relationship between choreography, visual art, and design. 3. To utilize new forms of reproduction, capture, animation, and image-based media, moving images or moving bodies. 4. To reconfigure spaces, to situate choreography in new relationships to exhibition spaces. 5. To have dedicated spaces for choreography. Choreography has always been a tenant to theater spaces, to opera houses, and to makeshift places that serve as temporary hosts. Choreography needs to own property, real estate. As more and more venues for dance writing vanish in 2015, I suggest a new exploration of the etymology of choreography, itself the definition of dance writing, and I propose a rigorous analysis of the new advancements, challenges, precedents, and ruptures afforded by presenting the choreographic arts in a museum context. Thanks.
Feels wrong to talk now, but next version I'll do it differently. This is something Larissa Velez. It's like this is better. Larissa Velez wrote something that is my favorite thing, the only thing I've ever read that I liked of what I need. It was an experience of another time with other bodies. It was an experience of a space that held all the bodies, and it was also a mass revolt. It was our task to be in this together, to allow ourselves to be overcome and to surrender to sensation. I make dances from a desire and rage that I call utopia. I make work as a practice of growing as one would grow a plant. I make work as a practice of growing a new body, an uncivilized body, a decolonized body, a utopian body. I make work as a practice of growing a collective body with all the participants, including the audience. I make work as a practice of building a new theater, otro teatro. I didn't translate that title because I think it's time you gringos learn how to speak Spanish. A ritual of becoming uncivilized, of becoming decolonized,
a communion that moves the audience from apathy to empathy. I make work as a practice of healing, healing my body, myself, healing my collaborators' bodies, and healing my audience. I make work from the rage of being a Latin American living in the belly of the empire in a post-colonial world. I make work from the desire to escape the oppression of the era of time, to grow the space of no time, ritual time, beyond time, a suspension of that other time, the schedule. I make work as a practice of growing a utopian body with a practice of pleasure. A practice of being in pleasure, of being a body in pleasure, a sensational body, a connected body, an anarchic body, filled with pleasure, with love, with magic. Can you turn the light off, please? Thank you. A practice of being in pleasure with a brain that melted down to the skin, the flesh, the bones, the guts, the sex, and with eyes that see without knowing, they see without naming.
I'm not Raja Feather Kelly, and this will be Raja Feather Kelly.
Hi, my name is Raja Kelly, and I am a choreographer here in New York City. I thought that what I would do for you all is read to you my artist statements. It's something that I feel that choreographers, artists have to continue to write and rewrite as they continue to grow and redefine themselves. And I always keep track of mine. So I have my artist statements from 2009 up until 2016, the most recent artist statement, and I love looking at what has changed. I also have this like little video of me rehearsing that I thought I would show, so I hope you all enjoy. Sorry I couldn't be there to take your questions, but please do send them to my website or email, which that information you should have. So here we go, starting from 2009. Hope you enjoy. Thanks for having me. I consider myself a theorist. I see myself a chemist with small pieces of the world at my fingertips, small pools of my imaginations flooding a war between what I see and what I touch. I am a sponge, a chameleon sponge looking for a secret. What here is at my disposal and what change is at my expense? What is a vision if not merely a failed dream, one you forgot to have, one we spend too much time trying to recreate and living? What am I if not the dynamics of music and the influence of the product of infinities between years, sunrises, hours, and handshakes? Is there a future for my broken shapes and lines convoluted by mixed messages and Picasso pieces? Is there a message in here somewhere? Am I standing on it, in it, or is it in my hands, or feet rather, grounding itself, becoming perennial? 2011. I consider myself an image maker. My experience as an actor, dancer, writer, filmmaker, and administrator has given me no label to concentrate the work I create. I am inspired by and work through collecting and combining images, provocative images emblematic of the beauty I see in pain, deceit, and motivation. As a little boy, I've always been drawn to the life of Andy Warhol, its depictions of rawness, the personal and the private, as well as the borrowed and the exploited ideas. I have spent a significant time studying the work of Anne Sexton, her inclusion and development of what we know as confessional poetry. Sexton created images that readers could find empathy with, and her work became an archetype for artists doing work for communities of feelers needing permission to take risks. Connecting these two platforms for making work through the medium of dance is my focus in dance performance work. 2012, February. I am interested in exploring work that is written with understanding of the human condition. I recognize the human condition to be distinctive in patented landscapes of being human, particularly existentialism, fear, desire. I am interested in creating multifaceted artworks by organizing the layers of history, philosophy, literature, and the arts that lead us to understanding the human condition. It is my goal to bridge common psychologies and philosophies behind the human condition and to create a referential and investigative physicality as an entry point to my aesthetic theories and plots. I plan on developing a line of work individually and collaboratively, which includes performance, written text, audio works, and photography, film focused on questioning and considerable answers to the human condition. In 2012, in September, I changed my artist statement to this. My artist statement is as simple as the words, do you hear what I hear? Do you see what I see? Do you feel what I feel? It's kind of like the children's game of telephone. In 2013, I've been developing my work as a movement-based performance essays. My artistic process begins with physical games, puzzles, and systems and strategies and develop into a research-driven, iterative performances. A fully realized work requires engaging in these open-minded practices over time. An ongoing theme for me is pop art. It's the movies that have really been running things in America ever since they were invented. They show you what to do, how to do it, when to do it, how to feel about it, and how to look and how you feel about it. That was a quote by Andy Warhol. My current explorations and collaborations are wondering if this quote is true. I want my collaborations to extend beyond what we see as ordinary, especially in respect to movement vocabulary, the line between the personal and the private, and duration. My research-driven iterative process questions when the audience becomes necessary to the achievement of the work, and by what means is most appropriate to communicate to said audience movement, text, video, and prop. And 2016, this is my artist statement. I am obsessed with the life and work of Andy Warhol and the development of popular culture over the last 30 years. I use performance making and exhibition as a way to promote empathy. My artistic practice identifies and magnifies opportunities where popular culture and human desire intersect. My practice imitates the structures, themes, and aesthetics found in reality television, celebrity culture, and social media, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and deconstructs them. The work I create addresses how we are taught to interact with different human themes through television, movies, music, and art. My performances combine fashion show, gallery exhibition, dance performance, drag, stand-up comedy routine, minstrel show, and stage play into a single, overwhelming, oversaturated gemischten work. That's a German word that I cannot pronounce, but what it means is it's when the artist and the audiences alike recognize their shared humanity. Thank you very much. That is what I have. That is what I think. I think you all have a printout of my artist statement, so if you can hear me well, then you can read how I've been developing my work and myself as an artist. Thank you.
So thank you all for coming, and if you have to go somewhere, now's a good time to go. And are we going to make a little circle here, a little bit closer maybe? Yes. Okay, and Tommy, you will be our moderator? Antje? Okay, so let's start. Tommy.
Thank you all for coming. Check. And thank you to Frank and Antje and Cuny for allowing this to happen. This was, well, in an atmosphere where we have absolutely no idea what to expect. That exceeded all expectations. But it was extremely beautiful and profound, and it's hard to now at this point have questions about that because there were so many questions presented and just given. But I am curious if do we need manifestos? Was this at all necessary? I do wonder, everyone in this room is working a lot, all the time, and everyone is, as they've brought us, each of us into this world so beautifully tonight, we also have the gift of seeing their work in any, in various places and various times. Is the work not enough? What more does the artist have to do, I guess is my question, right?
I can answer. Sorry to jump in real quick, but yeah. So one of my performers was asking me. She said I was trying to give her a class description, and she said, "Okay, well, what problem is your class solving?" I was just like, "Fuck," because that was just an amazing question, and I was just like, "Damn it." one of my, just challenging me again, and I gotta like go home and think, and it's been frustrating me for the past week. I haven't been able to answer her. But yeah, absolutely, because I think it's now forced me to reflect and ask myself, like, what is my position? Like, where am I positioning myself in midst of the work that I'm doing with everyone else in the community and in my time, and in a sense, who am I also accountable to? In that regard, she's making me accountable, and I'm having to go back, not necessarily manifesto in the sense of I'm writing it or using a format of inscription or documenting in that sense, but it's really making me consider, okay, from where we started to where we are now, what's our position? What's your position? Where are you? And I think it's absolutely necessary. And I realized I was like, oh yeah, I got re-question the self. So for me, yes.
Hello. Oh. No, it's interesting that you want to say something too. I was thinking about your manifesto, Katy, and I wanted to say that I think I've thought of from, I think pretty much the beginning of making work, that every work that I'm making is a manifesto. And I mean, I feel like a very clear example is ballets. Yeah, but I think sometimes because of the abstract nature of dance as a form, it's nice to put some language to it, to spell some things out. I don't know. It's a good exercise in using language, and I mean, I think it's a good practice to. I mean, we do it every time we have to write an artist statement, I guess. Yeah, I don't know, but I also think another form. Okay, that's the last thing I'm going to say.
Every time you have to write.
Yeah, that's why it takes forever. No, that's what I wish I could do. I wish I could like beam myself into the panel and just do that. But how Faye's manifesto was, like that was like, I feel like that's a call that, I don't know, there's so many ways to approach that. That's why when I did what I did, but then I had written something, then I felt like, oh shit, I shouldn't say anything. It's like, I'm contradicting myself here, but anyway.
I would say this relates, for me, back to your question at the very beginning, which is given such lack of resource and something about the particular nature of being in this country, in this city. For me, I totally agree that every piece feels like a manifesto. And for myself in particular, I don't quantify one part of my practice over another. So marketing language and being able to speak marketing language in my improvisation practice, it's kind of like I'm always making art. So, and I think that's why my presentation was very much just something that exists in my work, which is an interplay between all the language we have to create to get ourselves to do what we do, and then to present it and execute it for people, and being particularly interdisciplinary. I think the folks that are interdisciplinary also we're working in different forms, and language is huge. So I would say there's something about that for me. It's kind of like I never want to feel like actually when I'm involved in these other activities that they're lesser than the creative process. I hope that to be in a situation where it's all one. And so the manifesto is present in every work.
I was a journalist, a newspaper journalist, before I came back to dance. And some of what I used to say was that I could tell more truth as an artist than as a journalist. And so for me, when language comes out to tell you about what the thing is, or I believe this, or this is my practice, I believe it less than if I just see you do your practice. which is not to say that it's not good to sift through, sort through, struggle with how to articulate what it is that you do, and the doing itself for me speaks the truth in its sort of most impactful, powerful, salient, distilled. All of that is most potent for me in the being and doing itself, and not the performance work, not like, oh, as a witness of the performance, but like the seeing the artists doing their work all the time, the watching the artist's trajectory over the course of time. So not any one singular work that rises to whatever standard is du jour, but the way that that practice of that artist manifests, transforms over time for me. I feel like that's my witnessing of their manifesto.
Do you think, collective view, that how different would your work be if it were as well supported as it could possibly be?
I think it would be so incredibly good. It would just be great. And I don't think there's any, like, I really resist that idea that we create out of suffering. We suffer as human beings, period. We witness suffering. Like, we are creative and we don't need more. No, thank you. We can make, we can just make more, we can touch more people, we can connect to more people, we can connect to more possibilities. And that's, you know, I feel like every single person here in this community that extends beyond this room is like, there's something that you did, Paloma, that just, with your hands above your head, and just like remembering like who we are in this embodiment, like we are here in this embodiment to do this thing. Nothing is gonna be bad about like helping us.
Any other thoughts out there?
Hello? Good. That being said, at the same time, I live in Brussels, and a lot of my friends actually have received really major subsidies, and pretty much every single one of them, the first work they make, and probably the first and second, are all absolutely terrible. Like, probably the worst thing, because it's like, oh, of course I need 20 flat screen TVs and an elephant, and like, it really gets to this kind of excessive place that, I don't know, I mean, I still love coming back to New York and feeling like the density of like the pulp of the material. Like, there's something that's so rich and vibrant about the work. So I don't know. Yes, I don't think we should necessarily be like struggling and starving, but at the same time, there's something that condenses it. I don't know. Maybe there's another way to think about it, but yeah.
But I would say collectively, each of the artists in this room are talented enough to move to Brussels, and you do just fine. You know, what makes you stay in New York?
Well, funny enough, actually having lived in Brussels for a year. Well, I guess it goes back into the question you asked previously, Tommy, but then in relationship to your kind of driving force in politics now, Kate, and then Luciana as well on self-care. I've tried for a long time to see if I could disassociate my existence from my work, and now it's just like, nah, I can't, you know. And so the idea on support is also in relationship to politics. And in the sense that, you know, for so many of our existences our existence is not truly supported, in the sense that we actually do have a government and a system that is vehemently destroying and vehemently castrating and vehemently assaulting literal existence. And so I think the notion of support for me has gone so much deeper, in the sense that in relationship to all of our works, we're in a literal time of like life or death, stakes, you know what I mean? And it's just kind of like, well, who knows? Yeah, by next year, this time, the work we're doing could literally put, a target on our back. And it's like, are you absolutely really willing to live like that? In the sense that if we think about the 1960s, we write now about Angela Davis's work, but she literally had a target on her back. And we, like, that's gangster. It's not really. They were shooting. Like the poets, like they had guns. And it's not, that is where we are. And so for me, the idea of support, even with the money or whatever, it's just like, well, it means nothing right now, because like literally our work is our call to arms for every person up here. I'm sorry, I've spoken for a long time, but then I guess I'm looking towards Luciana and Kate in this idea of care, and it's just like, well, we're the ones that have to care for each other and continuously try and reciprocate that and infect that notion of care. Now, now I do actually absolutely understand how that is revolutionary.
Yeah, I feel like this word, the work, keeps coming up, and that makes me think about like the laboring of what we're practicing, and also when we're using the word work in relationship to capitalism. Like, is the work the product? Like, a lot of times I feel like there's languaging, especially with foundations and stuff, where the work is like the thing that gets put on the stage. But obviously it's like the work is so much deeper, and then it becomes, it's obvious, but it all feels so much in connection to the market. And I feel like when I'm thinking about care, it's really this act of being like, no, I'm thinking about this. Like, and I feel like you touched on this too, Faye, like separating ourselves from the market. Not meaning we don't participate in the market, but just like really touching in with who we are as a community and within ourselves, not only in relationship to the market.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot, like what you said about the work, that relationship money. I agree with what Katy was saying. It's like we actually need more support, but I think what the problem of that, when it gets to that model, that European model, just to simplify it, is that it becomes a kind of paternalistic thing, and it is within this idea of market. It's like we're going to throw some money at you so you make something good to be toured around and marketed. And I think what that does, in some sense, is not necessarily empower the artist in that model, but make you into a child and make you stick to the model. And it doesn't necessarily, I don't think it's that we have to be suffering to make radical work, but I do feel like, I feel like I've fluctuated from between, I've been very lucky and had a lot of funding and have had nothing. And when I was having, like now I'm in the nothing side, and when I was in the all of it, all at once, that was really hard too, because it was a lot of pressure, and I felt like I felt like I had to resist. There was such a push to make good work. Not that we all want to make good work, but it's in a sense a kind of work that is not about, that's what you're saying, that is within the capitalist model. Because I started, sorry, that's the last thing I'm going to say. I started making dance, just because I like to dance, but because it felt good. But I started making work, or piece dances, in a sense, realizing that this is the most radical thing to do in this society, is to just make an experience and not make a product. And I thought just the act of doing that was resistance enough. But then I realized as the years went by into my career that there's that we slowly gravitate towards being in that same model of production that's not unlike a factory. In a sense, the dancer is the lower, the blue collar, the factory worker that gets paid less, and their body. Someone mentioned that. Who's talked about that? The piece with the releve and oh, it was yours. Yeah. That relationship of the. To me, that's where the self-care. And I haven't gotten to it yet, but what I'm considering. The work that has come out is almost like a consequence of it, but what I'm trying to do is like, how do I resist that model? In a sense, it's like, okay, I'm going to not make work, not treat the dancer as the worker that is doing a product to be served to an audience, but what if it is a healing ritual practice that is about becoming. That's why it's not just poetic language, like, oh, I'm growing myself in a body because that sounds really cool and organic and it's trendy. It's the realization that, no, this is a practice of transformation and caring for ourselves, because it isn't to serve this like bourgeois, used to be like this, those people that go to the ballet like in Lincoln Center only because it's a status symbol or something. That if they see anything of this, they would like be horrified,
There has to be some way that it can be like a kind of interdependent model, because I just got this amazing Doris Duke Artist Award that came from tobacco money. It came from a pretty evil capitalist thing that was fucking everyone up. So I don't know. I think it can't be so black or white.
Well, you're recycling that money.
I'm recycling it. Yes, I'm putting it into good things. Right. I'm transforming it. Yeah, I'm taking in the black smoke and putting out rainbow. Yes.
But also it's a bind because you're not in a position, I don't think any of us are in a position to refuse that kind of funding.
Yeah, but I think it's also just more complex, isn't
it? Yeah.
We are wanting to be seen. We are wanting to be a part of a marketplace in some way, have our, what is the exchange? I guess there's a whole other revolution to the model.
I feel like, I think we want to be heard, seen, heard. But I don't want to be marketed. I mean, you want to tour because you want your voice as an artist, your manifesto. You want to have this conversation. We all deserve to be showing our work in as many places as possible. I don't call that marketing. I think the problem is with the people that are honestly, like the presenters in a sense that keep recycling the same people. That's where the problem comes in, that where there isn't a diversity of voices there. I don't think that we should, I'm not saying like, I don't tour because that's stupid, because that's marketing. No, I wish I could be showing my work around more. I don't know.
Yeah, and I feel similar. I think that, clearly, we live with capitalism. You know what I mean? We're in the market. But I think when I think about this idea of self-care, I'm just like, we need to fucking know who we are outside of the market and not be defined by it, and kind of think about all these other like economies that we're already engaging in, like caring economies, feminist economies, barter economies, and kind of like create systems of support so that when we go into the market, it's like from a place of care,
Is this, okay. So many things to say. So I'm curious about, as we're having a conversation around labor and capitalism and, alternative economies, and at the same time discussing self-care, I think we're also neglecting to to consider that a lot of the folks who have been in that lower rung of funding and visibility and representation have really established those models of self-care and have done so without funding and without support and without acknowledgement. And there's this interesting language that's surfacing around in performance communities around self-care. Not accusing anyone in this circle, but it is a newer market that has kind of rooted itself in our performance communities that I consider really problematic, particularly because Indigenous folks and folks of color for many years who have been making work in that way have not been granted opportunities because they're making work in that way, because narrative is involved, or because there is a political leaning, or because there is an assertion of radical self-care as political and as important and integral to the work that is being constructed, that now is all the rage. So I wonder how we acknowledge the fact that in this quote-unquote new moment of self-care as being important, that it's actually, it's an old moment. And how do we acknowledge, pay homage to the folks who have been doing that, right, for many years before this contemporary, exercise of radical, or radical / self-care. And those folks are folks who will continue to not get money, right, because they've died, right? So how many folks we lost, in the AIDS pandemic who were learning how to actualize their grandmothers and their great-grandmothers' ritual practices and self-care practices, the women who were taking care of the men who were dying in the 1980s and 90s. So, this is another conversation, but I think there is also just the absence of how we historicize folks of color show up in these conversations when we start talking about how are we taking care and who gets to own the conversation around what that looks like. It's something we should consider.
Bad moderator. Terrible, terrible moderator. I know that this conversation, I don't think this conversation is, I wouldn't say it's particular to this community, but I think it is, I don't think this could happen anywhere else. I think this is a New York conversation. I think this is a conversation amongst New York-based artists, and I think it's a very, very special one in that way. I know when I come home to New York City, I'm always very, very glad to be here, and I don't desire being anywhere else. Naja, in response to what you're saying as regards to the people who have laid the groundwork for this care, the generations of New Yorkers and artists who have lived and bred their work here, and done so with various levels of support, and completely in defiance of what support means. I do wonder what you feel is fundamentally different about now than what the experience of, I guess I should say, I don't believe that New York is worse off than it used to be, ever. I think that the myth that New York is somehow a worse place or is losing its sheen or something, I think is absolute falsity. I think is falsity a word? Falsehood. But I do wonder, as these cycles and systems turn, and in this kind of revolving sense, what really is the difference, I think, in the environment in which you work now versus the environment of a generation or two generations ago? Has it evolved?
In New York or in general?
What about gentrification? I think since I've been here, I think New York is not the same. It's much harder. It's like a mall compared to what it was before.
I also think,
I'm going to out myself as one of the more senior members here, one of the over 40 people, and that, yeah, there's the cost of living has skyrocketed, and the artist fees are the same as they were in the 90s, and I think there's like, well, I think presenting organizations have actually thought about care, like how they can better serve artists. There's actually, I think in my, personal experience, there's a lot less opportunity than there was, I'll just say in the 90s. The opportunities that were there in the past weren't great opportunities, but there were so many of them. Like back in the day, PS 122 was a factory, and you loaded it on Monday, Tech Tuesday, just Wednesday, show Thursday, Friday, Saturday, get out of there by Sunday at midnight, next. That was it. But now there are different models of residencies, of really gestating a work with support over a longer period of time. But I worry about the young people who are just starting out, sort of don't have access to as many opportunities where they don't have to really shell out that there once were, unless I'm just like not seeing them.
I mean, I think that big empty rooms don't exist, that like access to empty rooms, whether or not there's heating and whether or not there's broken floor. I mean, I think that we wouldn't have started making work, period, if we didn't have access to a big room that had no heat and had crap all over it. But it was the only thing that actually made us make our work to begin with. So yes, like opportunities to like actually show, but also opportunities to like hide and just do your thing without anyone looking at you, without anyone coming, with no sort of no checks and balances that an overlooking institution will want from you, of sort of, okay, now you're going to present your work in progress and it better be good. Like actually just an empty garage. That I don't think New York has garages or basements anymore, I think. Outing myself as a younger member.
Well, I think New York itself has, I've been there for almost 15 years. It's definitely changed. But I think what's that?
Our culture has changed.
Yeah, our culture has changed. Well, I think that's what I was about to say, in the sense that we, as a community, I think have begun to not rely on source. Andrea, you were speaking of, you said like, oh, is Alistair Macaulay here? And I think that that's something that we've begun to negate and really just be like, I don't give a damn about that. Like this New York Times review, you know what I mean? It's just like, so the platforms for how we are engaging our work is absolute. Like I'm sure the ballets would absolutely horrify my man Alistair, and rightfully so. So in the sense that you're completely giving the middle finger to the institution of the New York Times to necessarily push your work forward, in the sense that you're saying no. As you just said, the community, we're going to reflect this work forward. So I think if anything, that has coalesced much more within the community, in the sense of we're creating language in order to give our practice definition and our existence definition. I think that will continuously grow and hopefully be expanded from generations coming forward. A broadening of the language, I think, that has to do with literally a broadening of what is being in front of them. What are we seeing? What are you experiencing? I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that that's where the revolution, that's a part of it. A necessary part of it is like saying, no, that definition of the it is no longer needed.
Definitely. I definitely think that one of the strengths is that in New York is the community, and and I think more recently the dialogue within the community of self-care, of supporting one another, has really strengthened, and so that there can be this dialogue of like, why are there no dance critics who really, have an open mind, and maybe that's why.
Or do their research. It's not even just about having an open mind. I feel like, do your fucking work. Like, do your work too. Don't just walk in there with your small set of experiences and expect that to translate onto everything you see just because you have a platform at the New York Times. It's irresponsible.
And I think there are only 2 dance critics in the United States, full time, as far as I know, in the entire country.
And that used not to be the case either.
Even 5 years ago, that was not the case.
The thing, one thing I find, to say, not to be all negative, is that, because I was thinking of real estate space, that's what I see most, that's like the scariest part to me about New York, and it's not just New York, but living in New York, what I feel, the oppression of the gentrification taking over, I think I saw some graffiti somewhere. Gentrification is the new colonialism. So I feel, you can feel that, the displacement. But also time, I find that the way we live with Facebook and social media and online and emails, and that's what I mean, maybe by the pressure, like when you are funded more, there is, and it's interesting that you were talking about studio, go back, leave that, go to studio, because that's like space and time. That yes, you need money to be afforded, that you need money to have space and time, and that's what you need to make work. But at the same time, when you get a lot of money thrown at you, you are expected to write back the email, do the report, do the delegate, even if you have money to pay people to work for you. The amount of time is just, there isn't enough time to be at that level and still make that time to do the creative, or to do it in any other way than shell it out. That's what I mean, then put it out the same way they saw you do it before. And so that's what I mean, to continue to be in a space of not knowing and asking questions. That's what feels, that kind of resistance. I don't mean like the stupid, resist the system, fuck, but really because it's what's necessary. We are making live performance, and in the world we live in, that in itself is a resistance to this drive towards just I don't know, living in the screen, and it's just, and it's interesting we're talking about self-care, and because it does feel like that does feel like in the time of AIDS, and in this time, to me, to care for your body, to be with people, to put aside the screen, to feel each other, I don't know, that's a manifesto, that's the manifesto.
Something for me, I keep thinking about is this sort of very steadfast artist path, that you are creating a life for yourself at all times. And I think to answer your question, Tommy, I wouldn't, the state of things as they are not such that I'm going to relocate myself, uproot my entire life, my entire system that I've worked so hard for, to go somewhere else and learn another language and do all of this stuff to make my art. It's, to me, that's fine for someone else too. It's not my path. And I think somehow in terms of care, something about when you're
making body-based work, there's just this reality that in order to continue as you age, you better have a system for keeping yourself okay from day to day, from performance to performance, throughout your life. So there's that, and then I think there's always this, like the intention we're putting forward to just even move forward in our own lives, that's language. I thought it very clearly when you're saying, Luciana, like the poetics you're writing about your work is not just like frilly, it's literally the thing that's making it different from just putting people in a room and being a dictator. It's like the language and the intention you're putting forward is what makes the thing. So, I don't know, I think of things in sort of this very integrated way, and for sure, Nigel, something when you had mentioned, who are these, especially ancestors of color who are not acknowledged in the picture. Like for myself, I sing in my work. Never was trained in singing ever. In fact, was terrified to use my voice and to sing up until, I don't know, kind of later in life. And it was through mantra and a very, very restorative yoga practice that was taught to me through a Shakespearean actor who had HIV, who was diagnosed with HIV, and basically cured himself from it, from a woman swami. So a whole Ayurvedic system. He's in remission. He doesn't have it anymore without medication. So in a weird way, and I don't talk about that. And appropriation comes out, like cultural appropriation comes out in my mind with that too. Like there's really deep Ayurvedic practices that are embedded in my work, but my work aesthetic doesn't look anything like that. So I think there's this interplay with really ancient practices that are, some people are wearing that in their work and fully embodying it, and someone like me it's really hidden, but the dialogue is going on. So I think just all these questions are like super complex, and it's each artist's life journey to navigate it. And that's your, through whether you have money, whether you don't have money, like all of that stuff. So, yeah.
We're a little bit over time. Should we take one or two audience questions maybe? Yeah. Can you take the mic?
Do I need the mic? I'll use the mic. First of all, thank you for all of your beautiful manifestos. This is really affirming and beautiful, and thank you. I want to say one thing, and then I want to ask one thing. And when I say, I'm going to say from my perspective as a performer, and when I ask, I'm going to ask from my perspective as a writer and researcher. So the thing I want to say is actually as a working class performer in solidarity with indigenized and colonized people who have had resources stolen from them, and in solidarity with Black and brown bodies who have had wealth created on their backs, right, and not received access to that wealth. And just in conversation with in conversation with these ideas about money and self-care, like when you cannot afford and your family cannot afford to support your New York City rent habit, taking the gig that pays can be self-care. So I just want to add that to the conversation about funding and self-care, that taking the money, taking the gig that pays you and pays your rent can also be self-care, and we shouldn't sneeze at that. The thing I want to ask as a historian and archival researcher is, how do you relate your work in dance in an ephemeral form, in a form that even, long after, at this point, the birth of the video, has been marginalized in scholarship, in research, in archival practices? How do you relate your work and also the work of the Manifesto to the power of discourse and to a broader conversation about cultural memory and what we can retain?
I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to say right now, but I felt like I needed to just say something about that. Okay, I feel like right now what we're calling manifesto, or like my practices or my value system, is really guiding to me within both my practice of making processes and work that will eventually be performed, and making containers for dialogue and work of other people's to be manifest in whatever way they're visioning. That the creation of a community of archive, that the creation of a collective experiences has felt like the most authentic entry point for me into this idea of how do we hold on to. And I think that's in the spirit of oral tradition, in the spirit of communal ritual, in the spirit of practices that are a part of my legacy and practices that I'm sort of reaching back for now as an artist, recognizing a deep tension that I have with the landscape that I'm making work in, and looking for creative practices that are more connected to my legacy. So I feel like that, for me, that's the way that I've been practicing at this current moment, finding a space for these ephemeral conditions, conversations, dialogues, for the ephemeral revelations to have, for there to be residue. Residue is a big part of, what I'm working with.
Not that residue means anything in some spaces. Some spaces don't give a fuck about residue, but I care about residue.
What would be the residue? What would be an example of residue?
That's a great question. So I feel like even within these manifestos, like what's going to remain with me from each of these is a part of a residue that's like, I can't sort of extract that experience from myself. The people who are in the room can't extract that from themselves. And when it's one person, maybe it feels isolated and whatnot, but part of the fact that we are in a space where we do share at some point in our practice, maybe as part of our process of building something together, maybe as performance, that there's often more than one person, but even if it's just me in a studio, then there's ancestral sort of conversation that's happening. So for me, each moment that I'm available to holding something of that, feels important as archive.
Maybe one more question.
Just want to echo thanks to all the panelists and artists for sharing your practices. My question is specifically for Black and/or queer and women-identified artists present. I'm curious about your origins. Where did you incubate? Who were your teachers? If you could offer that would be really grateful and appreciative.
Where did I incubate? Wow, I am always I remain in incubation. There's so many people who are coming to my head. Sharon Bridgeforth is a theater artist that I've done a lot of work with. I've been an apprentice of Sharon. So that lineage of theatrical jazz, monster, ritual, beautiful art makers, like Omi Oshu and Joni L. Jones and Daniel Alexander Jones, Vicki Grice, who's still in my constellation right now as someone I'm doing a lot of work with. That is a big part of my artist family. I went to Oberlin College for undergrad and got this swift kick in the butt around in diasporic traditions, out of Nigeria, Cuba, and Brazil. I continue to work a lot with folks who are in the kind of Afro-Brazilian traditions. And then also went to the School of the Art Institute for Performance Art. So it's these like practices that where I met Sharon was actually in Chicago. So I'm kind of finding intersections with like deeply embedded ritual, Orisha practices, visual art practices. Diane McIntyre was a dancer, choreographer that I've worked with as well. And this kind of contemporary theatrical jazz family have been in my cosmology of makers. I'm a street dancer. It was the first forums that I came to. House is huge for me, so the Chicago house scene is big in my cosmology, as well as Vogue and Ball. So that, you know, Daryl Jones is a person I've spent a lot of time with, and so that I feel like my constellation is this, but as the diaspora tends to be.
I'll go ahead and jump in. I'm not going to really name any of the institutions I went to, but I mean, take it really just the street corner can be your incubator. I mean, just literally, I'm thinking, I'll put it like this. When I moved to New York, that's when I first learned that people actually learned hip hop at like dance studios. I'm a kid in the 90s, you know, south side of Chicago. So, you know, when I moved to New York, and yeah, I mean, I was like, oh wow, in New York, they like, you know, put like hip hop in studios and people learned it there. Like, we learned it in, you know, the lunchroom and, you know, a locker, you know, like at some park, you know what I mean? Like literally, yeah, I mean, so that was the incubator. So, I mean, of course I can say, but now I can go back and really just remember just how many ciphers and like dance circles and dance battles were just all like, that went to like the wire, you know, in love, when you were just going at it, sweat just, you know, everywhere, and you just, you know, like your friends, you know, and so that for me is I can always go back to that place and say, oh yeah, that was a very real experience. That was, you know, amazing. We were 16, 17 years old, just, you know, going for it. And so that was the incubator, you know.
Well, I hope the evening served a little bit, you know, as the points of reference and the incubator perhaps for ideas. We're going to have a little after talk party, and I think for the artists, we do have some train tickets, but maybe some of the conversations we couldn't have now can continue there. If you would like to come with us, I think if you can make it to the ArKtype bar, it's on 36 on the south side in the middle of the street. But again, thank you for coming. Thank you, Tommy and Antje and André.